1 Kings 17:1. Now Elijah the Tishbite, from Tishbe in Gilead, said to Ahab, As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. Unlike many great names in the Bible, Elijah came without a long introduction. He didn't appear as the son of someone famous. He wasn't presented with royal or priestly lineage. He simply appeared, like a lightning bolt, like thunder breaking the silence. Elijah the Tishbite, coming from Gilead, a rugged, mountainous region far from the palace lights. But his heart burned like fire. His name meant Yahweh is my God, and he lived that out in a time of apostasy, in a time when idolatry spread across Israel, when King Ahab and his wife Jezebel officially instituted Baal worship, promoting pagan prophets and persecuting God's servants. That's when Elijah rose up. He wasn't a politician, he wasn't a warrior, but when he stood before Ahab's throne, the atmosphere shifted. There will be no rain, no dew, except at my word. Imagine that. A simple man, before the most wicked king of his generation, declaring that the heavens would shut at his command. This wasn't arrogance, it was spiritual authority. Elijah didn't speak for himself, he spoke for the Lord, and God confirmed it. The drought began. After declaring the drought, Elijah vanished from sight. Not out of fear, but obedience. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. 1 Kings 17:2-3. God led him into obscurity, into isolation. There, by the Kerith ravine, away from everything and everyone, Elijah learned to depend completely on the Lord. There was no marketplace, no neighbors, no human provision. His only guarantee was this, I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. And so it was. Morning and evening, ravens brought bread and meat, and Elijah drank from the brook. A silent miracle, a supernatural provision. But time passed, and the brook dried up. Yes, even places of provision can run dry. But when that happens, God already has another path prepared. Then the word of the Lord came to him, Go at once to Zarephath. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. 1 Kings 17:8-9. Now Elijah would leave the wilderness to experience a new miracle in the home of a grieving woman, the widow of Zarephath. She was poor, hopeless, preparing the last meal for herself and her son. I only have a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. 1 Kings 17:12. But Elijah told her, First make a small loaf of bread for me, then make something for yourself and your son. It wasn't selfishness, it was an act of faith, and the woman believed, and then the miracle. The jar of flour was not used up and the jug of oil did not run dry. 1 Kings 17:16. There, in Zarephath, Elijah not only ate, he raised the widow's son back to life when the boy died. For the first time in Scripture, someone was brought back from the dead. Elijah prayed with tears, and God gave the child's breath back. 3. Years passed since the drought was prophesied. The land was parched, the people divided, and Jezebel the queen was killing the Lord's prophets. Israel was living in spiritual darkness, and in the midst of this, God spoke again to Elijah. Go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land. 1 Kings 18:1. Elijah reappeared, and when Ahab saw him, he sneered, Is that you, you troubler of Israel? 1 Kings 18:17. But Elijah, unafraid, replied, I have not made trouble for Israel, but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. The prophet proposed a challenge, a showdown between two gods, Yahweh or Baal. Elijah called the people to Mount Carmel. 450 prophets of Baal, 400 prophets of Asherah, and just one man of God. There, before the crowd, Elijah asked the most piercing question: how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him. 1 Kings 18:21. But the people said nothing. 2 offerings would be set, 2 altars, 2 prayers. The God who answered by fire would be the true God. The prophets of Baal went. First they cried out, they shouted, they danced. From morning till noon, no answer, and Elijah mocked them boldly. Shout louder, surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. 1 Kings 18:27. They slashed themselves. They bled, but Baal remained silent. Then Elijah rebuilt the Lord's altar with 12 stones representing Israel's 12 tribes. He set the wood, the sacrifice, and ordered everything drenched with water 3 times, until the trench around it was filled, and then he prayed, without shouting, without cutting himself, with reverence. Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant. 1 Kings 18:36-37. And then fire fell. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. Found 1 Kings 18:38. The people fell face down. The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. Elijah commanded the false prophets be seized. Judgment was carried out, and soon after, a small cloud, the size of a man's hand. 1 Kings 18:44. Rain returned. Elijah ran ahead of King Ahab's chariot. With supernatural strength he reached Jezreel, 1 man, 1 altar, 1 prayer, and God responded with fire and rain, even after fire fell from heaven, even after the people declared that the Lord, he is God, even after the rain fell on the dry land. Jezebel's heart remained hard. When she heard what Elijah had done to Baal's prophets, she vowed, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them." 1 Kings 19:2. Elijah, the prophet of fire, fled. Yes, the same man who faced kings and crowds was now afraid, exhausted, human. He ran into the wilderness. Under a broom tree, he prayed, but it wasn't a prayer of faith, it was a prayer of pain. "I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." 1 Kings 19:4. This was the cry of a man at the edge, wounded not by swords, but by the weight of the journey. But God didn't rebuke him. Instead, God fed him. An angel touched Elijah and said, "Get up and eat." Elijah slept, ate, slept again, and the angel returned, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." 1 Kings 19:7. Strengthened by that food, Elijah traveled 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Horeb, the same mountain where Moses saw God's glory. There, in a cave, Elijah hid. And God asked, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" The prophet poured out his heart. "I have been very zealous for the Lord, but the Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death, and I am the only one left." 1 Kings 19:10. God called him out of the cave. A mighty wind passed by, but God was not in the wind. Then an earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake. Then fire, but God was not in the fire. And then, Aish, gentle whisper. 1 Kings 19:12. It was there, in the silence, in the stillness, in the intimate, God spoke to Elijah. "Go back the way you came. There's still work, there's still purpose, and there are still 7,000 in Israel who have not bowed to Baal." 1 Kings 19:18. After Horeb, Elijah was never the same. God restored his strength, and commissioned him to raise new leaders, anoint kings, and prepare his successor. So Elijah went from there and found Elisha son of Shaphat. 1 Kings 19:19, a farmer, an ordinary man, but with a ready heart. Elijah approached and cast his cloak upon him. It was a silent yet profound gesture. "You are chosen, you will be the next prophet." Elisha didn't hesitate. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, and then I will come with you." And so he did. He slaughtered his oxen, burned his plow, and broke from his past. He never looked back. Elisha began to serve Elijah, not yet as a prophet, but as a disciple, a faithful servant, watching closely. During this time, Elijah still worked miracles. He rebuked King Ahaziah, Ahab's successor, prophesied his death for consulting Baal-zebub. And when messengers and soldiers came to arrest Elijah, fire fell from heaven twice, consuming those who dared treat him as just a man. "If I am a man of God, may fire come down from heaven." 2 Kings 1:10. Even at the end of his journey, Elijah burned bright, but his time was ending, and a glorious departure was about to unfold. With certainty, now we reach the climax of Elijah's journey, one of the most extraordinary moments in the Bible. A man of flesh and blood who never tasted death, but was taken up to heaven in a whirlwind of fire. When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. 2 Kings 2:1. Elijah knew. The day had come. His time on earth was ending. But not in the usual way. They walked through Gilgal, then Bethel, then Jericho. In each place, the prophet said to Elisha, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" And Elisha replied, "Yes, I know. Be quiet." Elijah, trying to spare him the pain, said, "Stay here." But Elisha insisted, "I will not leave you." They knew this was their last day together, and every step was sacred. They reached the Jordan. Elijah struck the water with his cloak. It parted, and they crossed on dry ground, like Moses and Joshua, as if Elijah were saying, "My journey ends like the great ones." On the other side, Elijah turned to Elisha. "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" And Elisha, with courage and spiritual hunger, asked, "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." 2 Kings 2:9. Elijah replied, "You have asked a difficult thing, yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours." And then, suddenly, the heavens opened, the invisible became visible. As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. 2 Kings 2:11. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. He didn't die. He didn't grow sick. He was taken by God. Elisha saw it and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." And he saw him no more. He tore his garments in mourning, but also in reverence. He picked up Elijah's cloak, and a new prophetic generation began. Elijah, like Enoch, was taken by God. He is the second man in the Bible who never tasted physical death, and to this day his departure remains one of the greatest mysteries and displays of God's glory. If this story moves your heart, if you long to live with the same boldness and faith like this video, share it with someone who needs to wake up spiritually, and subscribe to the channel Knowing the Word, because here, every Bible story comes alive and transforms our lives, one chapter at a time.